Hey Ben, we're live.
Hey everybody. Drew told me this was going to be rough and raw, so I figured, you know what? Hey, he's going to take over and he's going to do the intro while I was closing out some tabs on my computer. So, anyway, welcome to probably the first Drew and Ben podcast in well over a year because I'm in a new space now. It's not the spacious living rooms that I was once in. But obviously, Drew is not in his usual spot either. So, a little new for both of us. So I think what we're going to do tonight, this was spontaneous. Drew just called me up. He's like, I don't know what to do, but I want a podcast. So I think what we're going to do is probably talk about the projection some. There's some new data that went into it, see if there's any sort of changes. I know Drew and I went through and made some roster changes where he's like, hey, you're an idiot for putting that guy in over someone else. I think we got most of those things corrected, and I think it's worth taking a look, and maybe we'll even get some way, way too early, you know, uh, r- rankings from Drew and I, and just take it from there. So, what do you think, Drew? How was that?
I think that's fine. Thank you for doing the intro
Hey, you're
today.
welcome.
Yeah. There's no formal agenda for this. I figured we would shoot the shit. I was hoping somebody would respond and that they want a pod. I guess everyone has more of a life than I do and than you
Well,
do.
listen, we're just hunkered down in Cincinnati with the weather right now because it's supposed to snow and
Yeah.
start early tomorrow morning, so we're just hanging out tonight.
Well, what? So you were playing some college football.
Playing some CFP 25.
Yeah, and then I'm just sitting here with my brother and his wife's dog in Tampa. She is flying from
You're dressed like
London.
you're in Tampa,
Yeah, well, we went and played golf today
and you haven't
in
changed.
Orlando, and it was like really cold. It was like 40 degrees this morning. So I don't know.
It's pretty cold all over the country. I don't know if anyone's told you. It's pretty
Yeah,
chilly.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so what do you want to do, Ben? You want to do power rankings first?
Well, yeah, I think we should just talk, like, rather than go directly into it. We'll get into where people belong maybe later in the episode. But I want to separate. We've always said there's like three tiers of teams. There's the winners, the guys who, depending on what they do throughout the year, could end up being a part of that playoff group, or the people who are just so shit that they're not going to do anything. So, roughly, we know it's Adam, Jack, JD. Those are like the golden three. Like I don't think Then you get into the next group where you say, hey, you know what? It's Sean, Drew, Graydon, and who else belongs in that group? But that's the question.
Vinny's
So,
gonna be super offended he didn't hear his name
but
again.
that's what I'm saying. Does Vinny deserve to be in that tier, or is he in that? No, he's not even going to sniff the playoffs group. What's your opinion? You're shoving it all on me.
Is that so? We're just gonna go off on tangents here. That's totally fine. Unstructured. So Vinny a playoff team? So I think that there's a lot of exciting young pieces this year that could kind of change the standings this year compared
And
to
you know
where they
what we're
were
gonna
last
do,
year.
Drew? Again, on the fly, we're gonna pull up the projection sheet right now and see how they back up what Drew's saying.
That's fine. I'm gonna be curious if we need to like update these two. Like for example, I guess where I was going with this is I don't know if there's a higher impact prospect. I guess personally I think there is, but I think you could easily make an argument that there's not a higher impact prospect this year than Jason Dominguez in New York. Who's the
Think
owner of
so?
Jason Dominguez? It's Vinny. So do we have Vinny in here as having Jason Dominguez?
Yes, we do. In his lineup in the outfield,
And what are the projections for him?
it's gonna be right here. So 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases, but with not great production in the runs and RBIs. But I will say, these models don't accurately reflect that because I don't think they take in team performance almost enough. But
Well,
that's
I
a
would
personal
expect
complaint.
I would expect Jason Dominguez bats towards the bottom of the Yankees lineup, at least most of the season. Just young rookie. There's other established vets there. He's still super young. So maybe those runs and RBI production totals won't quite be there, but the OBP is fine for a rookie. And then it's a 2020 season. And I think if Vinny gets that, that is a really, really impactful rookie. Um, and so you asked me, is Vinny a playoff team? Well, he was a playoff team last year, and he's arguably going to get the biggest shot in the arm from any singular prospect this year. So I guess I'd
Vinny
have to say,
aggregate
yeah.
ninth, tied with Max and Jacob for aggregate ninth, one below myself.
But he's
And this
above
is with a
Jacob.
peer-reviewed roster. This is not me like twisting things to make myself look better. This is a peer-reviewed roster.
But he's above Jacob, who made the finals last year.
And you know what? The model says Jacob should have been shit last year, and it says he should be shit this year. But you know what? There is that managerial aspect of, hey, you know what? He's going to navigate everything correctly. He's going to pick up the right guys when he needs to, and he's going to get rid of the bad guys when he needs to. You know what I mean? He's going to do everything correct. Not many people can do that. I don't know if that's his whatever technical stuff he has on the side assisting him, if that helped him so much, or if it was just pure dumb luck. So, you know, that's what we're going to have to see this year. I
Yeah,
think quite a few
just
people
think
I've talked to think it was pure dumb luck, but you know,
I think the storyline is that Max has the most impactful prospects coming up this year, simply because he has number one overall prospect Dylan Cruz and he has Roki Sasaki. But before we flip to Max, just to finish it on Vinny,
yeah,
I do think that Jason Dominguez for him, and then Kyle Teal is the other one for Vinny. Vinny could have a claim best in his conference in terms of impactful prospects this year, and maybe second best in the league. And also, I think a big Austin Riley bounce back year is in the mix. A big Bobby Miller bounce back year is in the mix. I don't know. Vinny could surprise a lot of people. I think he's going to be good.
I don't know, man.
I
I
talked
think he's
myself into it
perpetual
during
third
this.
place. I can't listen to you say this is Vinny's year because you've said it every year for like 3 years now. You just can't put it together.
Yeah.
At some point, you know what I mean? It's time for me to step back into that limelight of being JD's number 2. Because let's be honest with ourselves, no one is beating JD in the regular season. And, you know, it just is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know. Vinny is super
So
interesting.
you talk about Max and Jacob.
Yeah. So let's look at Max.
So right off the bat, Paul DeYoung, according to this, not gonna get it done for Max this year.
Yeah, Max, everyone knows Max has like 7 second basemen on his roster. He just got another one with the Hyseon Kim signing by the Dodgers. Going to be more of a super utility. Maybe he picks up third base, and that's a third base solution for Max. But third base is a little tricky in this league. I think I highlighted it maybe in like a piece I wrote earlier, but I think Max and Graydon would be good trade partners because I think Max could get a third baseman from Graydon. Like maybe Graydon wants to sell Matt Chapman for his rebuild, but then these projections have Graydon high. I know I'm bouncing all around, but like Max, it's confusing. I don't know what he does at third base. You have Paul DeYoung penciled in there. He literally does not have another option. So I don't know.
I mean,
He's got to make a trade.
He's got to get a third baseman. And does he have anyone in the wings waiting to come up? This would be a good time for you.
Okay. So here's the story, right? So the Astros tried to trade for Nolan Arenado from the Cardinals after losing what's his face, Alex Bregman in free agency, right? So now the question is, who's going to be third base in Houston? Nolan Arenado then rejected, like he asserted his no trade clause. So that trade didn't happen. So is Zach DeZenzo, Ohio State Buckeye Zach DeZenzo, the potential starting third baseman for the Astros this year?
Could be. That's why
Isaac
they
Paredes.
way too early rankings.
They signed Christian Walker for first, and they have Isaac Paredes at third. I don't think anyone grades him out well as a good defensive third baseman. I guess Jordan DHs. I don't know. Zach DeZenzo could get playing time in Houston at third base. That's Max's internal prospect. He's got Graham Pauley in San Diego. They're trying to cut payroll as well. Maybe they want to make a play and have Graham Pauley back. These are not super high ceiling prospects, but Max just has to get by or he has to make a trade.
Now, here's another question: what happens to Pete Alonso?
What do you think happens to Pete Alonso?
Because I think if he stays on the Met, his production goes up. Just
Yeah,
because
of
of he's
course.
going to have Soto, in front of him. If he goes to another team, I don't know who he goes to, and I don't know what situation he would be better than what he's been. I mean, if he came to the Reds, let's get Pete Alonso to the Reds, but it's never going to happen. So out of
So
the teams
so
where he could possibly go to, is he any better in any other situation?
So he's not going to the Yankees because the Yankees signed Paul Goldschmidt.
Uh-huh.
So that was like the big rumor. Let me Google Pete Alonso. Like what are the rumors right now? So Mets remain likeliest to sign Pete Alonso as of 15 hours ago. But then 2 days ago, the Angels were considering Pete Alonso. So I maybe it's up in the air. If he returns to the Mets, I'm with you, Ben. That's really good. If he doesn't go to the Mets,
If he
let's
goes to the
pretend he goes to
Angels,
the
he might as well
Angels.
be worthless.
So what's that lineup? It's Mike Trout and
Nolan
and
Shanuel.
Nolan and what Taylor Ward is there presumably,
It's not
and then
great.
Pete Alonso. Um, Jeez. Yeah. Oh, maybe they like also signed Santander. I don't know. That's weird. So okay, but Pete Alonso could play huge for Max, but he's going to be a
Yeah.
first baseman. Doesn't help him at third base. Um, the pitching man, he needs Roki, and
But
I
he
wonder
will.
do
He
your
will. He'll have
rankings?
him.
Yeah, so your rankings right now have Max low, but they don't have Roki
Correct.
because
So
he
there's
doesn't
no.
have projections yet.
Exactly. There are certain foreign players, specifically Japanese market players, who don't have projection data on them because they don't have anything to project from. Like the NPB doesn't play like the MLB and even these minor leagues. So, yeah, there's no projections on certain guys. So if you see that where you're like, hey, my international guy who's coming over this year isn't on my team, well, there's a good reason for that. He'd have zero stats.
And we got Rhett Louder in there, but I don't think the projections are all that
No, the
kind
Rhett
to him.
Louders do not. Rhett Louders do not think he's going to actually pitch that much, and that kind of lines up with everything that I've been seeing in terms of the projected roster for the Reds. None of them are including Rhett Louder as a possible starting rotation guy immediately. I think the plan is, they just acquired the Reds, got some more pitching in the offseason. Let these guys marinate down at AAA more. Maybe use them to fill the back end of the season when you've got some injuries, but don't bring them out of the gate right away. So,
Yeah, so Max is interesting. So where do you want to go next?
well, we can jump back over to Jacob because this is the really interesting one. So I
They're
don't.
all interesting.
Well, they're all interesting, but you've got some two big holes right here. Okay, and I think you and I looked at this, and we we said, does he have anyone else to fill those positions? And I think his plan, as far as we were aware, and I think he asked for it, was to put Jackson Holiday and Perdomo in those spots. And the
Yeah.
projections do not look like they're going to play that much. I mean, again, I think if they got full seasons, that's probably a different story. But it does take into account, we're like, hey, he's not going to get called up until the All Star break, or hey, he's not going to get called up until after whatever that date is in April or May or whenever, you know.
Dude,
So
absolutely no one in the industry or in FTN or anywhere you'll look, no one has any idea what the Baltimore Orioles are doing. I couldn't tell you if Jackson Holiday is going to break camp with the team this year and what his playing times going to look like. Um, I guess he has Bryson Stott at second and Jordan Westberg on the roster. If those guys are healthy, that's really, really good for him.
yeah,
But then Perdomo and Jackson Holiday, the other internal
even
option
Evan
on the
Carter.
roster, the other internal option on the roster is Nick Gonzalez of the Pirates, which former top 100 prospect, he
Yeah,
could be decent. the Pirates will probably give him playing time and first crack at second base, and he might bat high in the order. I don't really know.
Might. But I think that's the thing. These are big question marks with Jacob's team. Don't, because these, I went back and I looked at the 2024 and 2025. Same projection model, same sets of data, blah, blah, blah. In that 2024 year, or Zips, which are Steamer, I believe, is actually what these are. Those heavily favored Grayton, but hated Jacob. But then you go to ATC and it was flipped. They really preferred Jacob's team to Grayton's team.
Yeah.
So don't take these with too much. This is their own model for projecting things. Like, I think anyone out there is expecting Evan Carter, if he gets a full season, to only have 13 home runs and 12 stolen bases? No, that's probably the very low. You do. You think so?
Oh, I think the stolen base number seems low, but I think a lot of people realized the power was a bit of a hot streak, and he didn't project for much power as a prospect anyhow. So 13 could actually be the number, but if he plays all the time, I'd expect 25 to 30 stolen bases.
You're probably looking at more like, even if he is a mediocre hitter, 70 runs and 65 RBIs rather than 57 and 50, especially if he's playing every day. That would be my thing.
The outfield is so young. The X factors
you just
here.
Shitting on Taylor Ward a minute ago?
I was, yeah. But the X factors are Jacob's top two prospects, Roman Anthony and Matt Shaw. And
I see nothing about hype articles for Roman Anthony. It's insane.
Nothing but hype articles?
Yeah. Think he's the second coming of Jesus.
He's the number 3 prospect in baseball, outfield. Matt Shaw is the number 22 prospect in baseball. The Cubs, again, kind of like the Orioles, have had a really weird, confusing offseason. And all signs point to them giving Matt Shaw an opportunity to claim the everyday third baseman job. Or maybe he's shortstop and then Dansby moves over to second and Nico moves to third. There's a lot up in the air, but he could have an everyday spot. Matt Shaw, Roman Anthony could be the X factors. And look, if I'm looking at his depth chart, I mentioned this with your pitching, Ben, and other things that I publish for the league. But like I always say, if your pitchers, if you look at your depth chart and you moved every guy that is like your SP1 down to an SP2, your SP2 to an SP3, it all looks great. If I move all of his outfielders down one spot, it looks a lot better. And that could happen if Roman Anthony is the truth. And then if Matt Shaw can capably fill in for the infield and Geraldo Perdomo is booted out of there, like it looks a lot better too. So,
yeah, I don't hate the pitching. Like, let's go look here and see where he's getting hurt. Okay.
Number 1 save holds. Okay.
Yeah,
that's how he dominated last year too.
He's got a respectable amount of strikeouts. He really does. A respectable amount of wins. He takes a hit on the ERA and WHIP.
How is their ERA and WHIP so bad with K's wins and save holds so good?
He's got quite a few strikeout artists who are not very good pitchers.
Let's go look at his pitchers.
Yeah.
Just so the people know.
So here's the biggest offender. The legend himself.
It's still a sub 4 ERA.
Oh, barely. 0.02.
Jameson Tyone's the fucking rough one. And Andrew Abbott, they have projected horribly.
Yeah.
So dude, these projections hate the Reds pitchers.
Well, as you should. I never trust anyone who thinks Reds pitchers are going to have a low ERA.
I'm scared to get the Brady Singer's projection.
You're playing in the most batter-friendly ballpark in baseball. Your ERA is never going to be good. If it is, it's luck. But yeah, who's got Brady Singer? We'll flip over to that and we'll come back.
Oh, well, I have Brady Singer.
Okay, well, that was a dumb question. 4.31.
That's better than Andrew Abbott and better than Rhett Lauder.
Well, again, I think Rhett Lauder, I think it gets into a gray area where you say, is the prospect really going to come up and dominate Major League pitching? Not everybody is a Paul Skeens. A lot of people struggle in their first few or, are not their tip top. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, with Jacob, I think that's where he really gets hurt offensively. Last in runs, last in home runs, last in RBIs, eighth in stolen bases, and ninth in OBP. The projections just don't think he has a good offense. He's like the anti Drew. If his offense was just a little bit better, he'd be right there. I really do believe that. But that's enough about Jacob. We can move on to another team.
Well, where did he finish in those rankings last year for runs, home runs, and RBIs?
That's a good question. Let me go
He
look.
finished. He finished. I have it pulled up. He finished ninth in runs, but much closer to the bottom than the top. Although your bottom was very, very bad.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Home runs, he finished third to last, and RBIs, he finished middle of the pack. I paused for a second. Did you know John Duong finished 11th in RBIs?
Really?
That's crazy. And he's projected second in these this year. I guess that's the Acuna coming back difference, but that's crazy.
But no, so I think Jacob overperformed last year. That's my professional, not personal, my professional opinion is that he overperformed. So I'm really curious to see what he can do. All right, but that's enough about Jacob's team. I'm sure if he's listening at all, he's getting very annoyed that I continue to shit all over it because I know mine deserves to have some shit thrown at it too. All right, so to talk about once Drew comes back, his favorite team you are there. His favorite team that he loves to gush over. He's going to be great this year. He's going to do awesome. I can't wait, Mr. Perry. Now, I'm not a Perry hater. I want to make that perfectly clear. But I think it's a little bit of lunacy to say he's there. He's right on the breaking point. No, he's off to a great start. He's got a great farm system. But he's still got some garbage on this roster. And obviously, the projections here have him dead last, aggregate of 8.8 across the board. Really, just no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Kind of lower tier on absolutely everything. Master of none.
I hear you on that, but I feel like 2 years ago Perry was literally last across the board. So being at least below average instead of literal worst in the league is improvement. And last year he finished 10th in runs, 11th in home runs, 9th in RBIs, 11th in stolen bases, 10th in OBP, finished 10th in strikeouts, last in wins. He finished 11th in ER. He was still at the bottom last year.
Right.
These projections are a godsend for Perry. If he finishes middle of the pack like that, that's kind of where Jacob finished in most of these categories last year.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody out there saying that Jacob's team is right on par with Perry's.
Well, you know what Jacob did is he finished like first in save holds.
Well, if Perry,
relief pitching's cheap. Relief pitching's cheap. If Perry wanted to go out and have 9th to 7th place finishes in every category and then first in save holds, that could get a playoff spot. It does in conference too.
Well, and we were just talking about pitchers with extremely high strikeout rates but projected bad ERAs. Look who his ace, what his stats are looking like. 216 strikeouts with a 4.22 ERA. And
it's a freaking joke.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. A lot of people are going to say that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. There's no way. I absolutely believe, as a Reds fan, that Hunter Green could go out there next year and have a 4 ERA while getting 200 strikeouts.
But to be fair, that's offset by an extremely optimistic ranking of Edward Cabrera, who they have with a 3.9 ERA. And like that just doesn't seem likely either. So, there's some give or take with these. I do like the rotation. I do think it has the potential to be a top 3 rotation in our league. He's going to add Andrew Painter to it. It's not in these rankings because, again, they hate rookies. whatever
Yeah, we did look at
system
those
this
things.
is.
Again, I will, even we'll show people live. So let's just say I take Jack Flaherty and I give Andrew Painter.
Well, but Jack Flaherty's good. But yeah,
I'm just saying
you're
as
just
a,
gonna show the effect. Like, what do
yes,
they actually have Andrew Painter for?
91 strikeouts with a 4.5 ERA.
It's really, yeah, it's not worth putting on here.
Right.
Um,
Compared to Jack Flaherty with 175 and a 3.85.
He's got a couple of reinforcements. Simeon Woods Richardson's interesting. He's got Tomoyuki Sugano. Now, what do they have? I don't think we've talked about this since they put in Sugano.
Uh, I'm not sure. I think we looked at Sugano and we said he did not have stats.
He didn't, but that was like 2 weeks ago. Maybe he does now.
Well, that was the last time I updated the data was 2 weeks ago.
Well, oh, okay. Oh, you'd have to go pull. I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's not something I can do right now.
I got you. So, okay, but he's got Tomoyuki Sugano, Simeon Woods Richardson, Andrew Painter, 3 starting pitchers not shown here. Chase DeLauder in the outfield is like the big offensive impact prospect this year for him. And internal improvement, man, that's what it's all about. This is Perry's like 3rd or 4th year with a lot of these prospects. Like Zach Neto, Anthony Volpe. He's still got Jared Kelenic sticking around. I'm not saying it's going to happen for these guys, Jordan Walker, but like, look, if he gets even one more of those guys to hit, and then he gets this fresh batch of prospects coming up over the next couple of years, the breakouts here.
He's got a good farm system. I'm not going to disagree.
The breakouts here, Steamer likes him better than he's been, and that's promising. And I think his rotation's super strong.
So here are the 4 that we've talked about so far.
How did we talk about the bottom 4? Did you do that on purpose,
Yeah,
or was that by accident?
Because we're starting and we're just working our way up. Unless you want to start branching off into other people, but I was just doing that.
I don't really care. What, you want to go to you next?
Yeah, we'll go to me
Ben,
next.
Ben, Ryan, Drew. That's the 3 horsemen of getting people to tune out of the podcast.
I know. Maybe we'll have to weave around that.
Well, so go to your rankings. Go to your ranks.
So I will say this: taking this is not as good as looking at this, the actual aggregate numbers, because you'll see, like, it makes it look Perry look terrible, but Perry's 8.8. These guys are 8.6, 8.6, and then you go to me 8.3.
He's right there,
and Ryan's at a 7.5. So
there's a big tier gap between.
There's a big tier gap. It says Ryan is the next step up from me.
So you talked about your you talked about your 3 tiers.
Yeah. I'm in dangerous position, but that's sort of the thing with my team is I attempted the rebuild and I made some not very smart moves, and I'm just riding or dying. Don't think there's a single guy on my roster over the age of 28, with the exception of Brent Rooker. Everyone else is extremely young, and we're just going to see what happens.
Do you have a move that you regret the most over the course of your rebuild? Is there something that you look back on and say, I should not have done that, or this one set me back?
Probably the Fromber trade. I think that was a huge critical error, and I think I hurt my pitching pretty significantly doing that, and I didn't really get the return that I needed for it. So I would say that was a big mistake.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, looking at my projections, obviously the big hole right now for me, and I actually need to update it, I believe, is Josh Smith, because obviously he's not going to get a whole lot of playing time now. I think it's the general attitude.
Yeah, because they made some signings.
Right. So actually, let me go fix that on mine. So I have to see what I did. It's been a few days since. Probably.
While you're updating that, I'll tell a funny story. It's actually not very funny at all. I was in the PGA Superstore the other day down here in Tampa, and I was at the checkout line, and I guess the dude saw like my Cardinals background on my phone, or no, I was wearing a Texas Rangers shirt. That's what it was, and he was asking me about the Rangers and stuff, and he was a Yankees fan, and he was like, oh yeah, you guys have like one of our prospects. I'm like, what guy are you talking about? And he's like, Josh Smith. I'm like, damn, dude, of all the people you know as a Yankees fan, it's I'm like Joshua H. Smith, and he's like, yeah, that's the one. I'm like, how does this guy know him?
That's
His
crazy.
former Yankee prospect, apparently. I didn't even
Yeah,
know that.
I didn't know that either. But yeah, so replacing it with Jonah Bride. I mean, Jonah Bride is projected batting fourth on that team to start this year, and so that was just a free agent pickup by me. I've still got some holes on this team, but you know, I like this team better than I did last year, so that's saying something.
Jonah Bride, first base, third base for the Miami Marlins. He's literally the Jake Burger replacement from your roster.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure I dropped Jake Burger. Isn't he a free agent now?
Now
You
he
could
got
just
picked up
go
by
pick him up.
Adam.
Oh, Adam picked him up. And Spencer Horwitz won't have third base eligibility. So you are just loaded up on those corner infielders, which is fine because those are really hard to come by. It'll be interesting to see if Tyler Stevenson somehow picks up. No, I don't think he will. They have too many first basemen now on that roster. Um, I don't know. We'll see if you need to trade one of those corner infielders to somebody like me who's desperate for them at some point during the season. I don't know. It's an okay team, Ben. I'd feel better about it this season than last season, but the big question mark is Strider. I don't think you can realistically compete if Strider's not back early and
I
effectively.
mean, even the projections, they say he's going to be effective, but he's not going to play very much. And even at this, I think is probably optimistic.
And, okay, and Brandon Woodruff's coming back too. If you get somehow 80% of Brandon Woodruff and Spencer Strider of a full season and they're 80% effective. So let's say you have them for 25 starts each
Mm-hmm.
and they're about like 80% of their effectiveness that they've been in prior years. That's really good for you. And
I
then
would
you
say
add
even
Joe Ryan,
70%.
even 70, and then you add Joe Ryan, Ryan Pepio, and Bryce
DJ
Miller.
Hers. Don't forget DJ Hers, the man.
DJ Hers is a great SP6. He's not a great SP4. He's a great
I think
SP6.
I found the next Spencer Strider in DJ Hers. So don't even get me started. That's
You're
my
gonna
personal
regret
opinion.
publicly saying that now.
I don't know, not at all.
Um, what's your like ranks across the board though? You showed us your like average rank.
Yeah, so again, I think for me, obviously my ERA and whip at 6, but there's nothing I do spectacular, it's telling me. Because
Yeah,
even
your
stolen
OBP.
bases since the loss of whatever his name was, who I traded, that really hurt me in the stolen base department too. So my hope is that I'll get someone like Chandler Simpson. I've heard his name a few times in some articles about the possibility of him coming up and playing this year. If you're not familiar with him, he had like 100 and something stolen bases last year in AAA or Double A. I can't remember what it was, but just absolutely dominated the base pass. And if I get someone like him, then suddenly I don't have a stolen base problem anymore. So, but yeah, I'm
Since
kind of in the same boat.
since we're here
Hmm.
and you are showing yourself as finishing 12 out of 12 in OBP.
Yes.
Let me name off the OBPs on your roster from
Yeah.
last year. Shea Langoliers, 288.
Yeah.
Zach Geloff, 270.
You can't
Christian
take Geloff though. He
Encarnacion,
was hurt and he played like 10 games.
Michael Toglia, 311. Jesus Sanchez, 313. Lane Thomas, 309. CES, 220. Ben Rice, 264. You cannot compete in OBP with this. This
Well,
is
no
awful.
shit. No shit. I mean, really. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, you're right. I can't. But my hope is that Zach Geloff is supposed to be an OBP machine, and with a full season, he's going to help me out a lot. Um, and everybody else is kind of who expect them to be. Now, there are some things on this roster that need to change. I no longer have Christopher Morel. Stevenson's not even in here. There's a few changes that have to be made to keep these fully updated to what I actively have going into the season with. But you're right. OBP is awful for my team, and
And you have
once
three relief pitchers.
I do only have 3 relief pitchers, like I said, there are some issues. We're gonna work on them as the season gets closer.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, nobody wants to
Let's
hear
go to
more about
Adam.
my team. To
Let's go to
Adam.
Adam.
Okay, so Adam is projected overall number one with an aggregate rank of two. Two. Okay, so Adam, one. Stolen bases is the only one where he struggles. Everything
And I
else
find
is
it hard, and I find that one personally hard to believe that he's only going to be fifth. Um, I guess he finished fifth last year in stolen bases, but
I mean, let's be honest here. The thing is, they don't have Shohei getting 50 stolen bases again. They have him at 34. And besides that, he
yeah,
doesn't have any absolute monsters on the stolen base path. He has a lot of really good guys, but
that's
besides
really
Shohei, there's nobody.
interesting. If Shohei Otani bin had stolen a much more reasonable 30 bases, which would have been more in line with what he's done previously,
Right.
Adam would drop in the rankings for stolen bases last year down to like 10th.
Right. Shohei just
Um,
powered him through. He essentially provided another all-star number of stolen bases in one single player while hitting 50 home runs. I mean, the level of season that Shohei had last year is something that's a once in a generational thing.
I see this as way more realistic this year, and if that's the case, maybe Adam legitimately does have a stolen base problem. His
Now
two best
listen,
pro
I'm not gonna say it's a stolen base because everything else is so good. Who cares?
his two best prospects are not base stealers either. So I don't really know where the improvement's going to come from in that
Well,
department.
you and I
So
were talking about this the other week. Is Adley because he's the big question mark now, and I know that's crazy, and maybe I'll be outcast for saying that at this point in time. Adley didn't have that impressive a year. These projections don't have him as. I mean, sure, he's got a good OBP, which is unlike most catchers, but that's really all he does. And if the Orioles don't know what they're doing, and I think they do, but let's just play along and say that they don't know what they're doing, his offensive numbers in terms of runs could drop. And is he that valuable then anymore?
they, despite his horrible second half of the season, and by the way, there's a direct correlation to when his numbers started going down, and it was after a thumb injury. So you could really chalk it up to
Should have
injury.
sat out.
The Orioles still batted him like fourth or second. I forget. It was either second, third, or fourth in the lineup in the playoffs. So they clearly still believe in him, and I don't really have any like hesitations with Adley. It is something to worth monitoring. Paul Goldschmidt's age and fall off is worth monitoring. Alec Boehm's situation, it seems like the Phillies are desperate to trade him. That's worth monitoring.
Now, to
Marcus
be fair,
Simeon. Marcus
these
Simeon
don't
could be
have
getting
Alec
old.
Boehm in his projections.
Oh, they don't even have Boehm. Well, okay. So it's probably not a real problem then for Adam. He doesn't.
Right.
That's the thing. When you're so rich like this, you don't have real problems. You have like first
You had to
world
manufacture
problems.
your own issues.
But you know what? No, if the stolen bases collapse a little bit, it's just a little bit less margin for error. I don't think it's going to cause him to miss the playoffs or anything. But just the you can't be a super team forever.
No.
This could be the first crack.
Could be. I wouldn't bet on it. If I was putting money on it, I wouldn't bet on it because the pitching is lethal.
Worst case scenario, Corbin Burns' strikeout rate continues to decrease. And he might still be an effective innings eater. And I know that's almost like blasphemous to say about one of the game's best pitchers over the last 5 years. But let's say he's more like a Yu Darvish type accumulator where he'll have occasionally a big
I'm
strikeout
gonna
game, but
disagree with you on
otherwise,
that one. I don't think anybody's expecting that level of baseball from Terry Skubal.
no, I'm saying Corbin Burns.
Mm.
No, I'm not going to slander Tarek Skubal, our Lord and Savior, at all. No, Corbin Burns. I'm saying his strikeout rate could decrease for like the fifth or sixth straight season. And let's say it's a 3.9 ERA with 11 wins, 12 wins in Arizona, and 180 Ks this year. If it gets worse even next year, like in 2026, that's a crack. And that's a big part of what Adam's trying to do. Michael Waka, no one would be surprised if Adam drops him a month into the season, and we haven't
Yeah,
penciled in here as one of his better starters. Shota Imanaga,
it could be a
we've
depth
seen
issue.
there could, that's all I'm saying. There
And
could be.
honestly, I think there is a world in which Shohei does not come back and pitch. I genuinely think there is a world that exists in which that happens.
Oh yeah, he said if he gets injured again doing it, it could be one minor setback, and he could say, "I'm done. I'm not doing it."
Right, because I'm
Um,
hitting so well, why would I not just focus on that? Which is what all two-way players, the conclusion that they eventually come to, which is you have to pick one.
and I do want to say one last point about Shota Imanaga too, who was so good for him last year. Um, which is just there's a history of pitchers that come over from the Japanese baseball league that are really good their first years in MLB, and then I'm not even going to say they necessarily fall off a cliff, but they're just never as effective as that first season, as game footage is kind of in on them at that
Yeah.
point, and scouting reports are there. Like we saw similar things happen to like a Dice K, Masahiro Tanaka. Like this is a
We're
this
still
is
living
a
in the
this is a
2000s,
studied
man.
this is a studied thing. So who knows? Sure, I love Shota Imanaga. I hate that he plays for the Cubs. I'm just saying there are question marks. This is not a bulletproof
Now,
team.
does anyone out there think that Jacob DeGrom is going to have a full season either? There's no way. He's not Jacob DeGrom if he has a full season.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of question marks. I think the pitching could go. I think the most likely outcome is that Adam's team continues to be really good, and we were completely wrong about most things. But there's always some possibilities, especially with the older guys. Um, so why don't we jump to Adam's direct counterpart, the man most closely competing with him. JD actually takes an aggregate at 3.8, but it's actually Jack who is close at 2.6. So there's a sizable gap from Adam and Jack to JD. About the same size of gap from me to Ryan. So let's go and take a look at Jack.
Jack has less weaknesses because Adam, goes out to number 5 in stolen bases. Jack's weakest category is number 4. I just don't believe this. I've been calling for Jack's downfall for years, and I know I'm like the boy who cried wolf at this point, but guys, it's not that good of a roster anymore. Ah,
I know you keep saying it, but Cal Raleigh is absolutely going to have that stat line. I don't think there's any question mark. Okay, Bryce Harper is absolutely going to have that stat line. I don't think there's any question. Nico Horner, yeah, that seems like Nico Horner. Jose, yeah, that seems like Jose. There's nothing on here where I'm like, hey, those projections are wildly messed up for that guy. Like, he can't possibly do that. There's nothing on here. I think Christian Walker is probably the biggest offender where I'm like, there's no way Christian Walker's hitting 31 bombs next year while rocking close to 100 RBIs. That's just not going to happen. I think that's the worst offender. Maybe Luis Robert
well,
going
what? He
30
hit like
30.
36 last year.
I'm just a Christian Walker hater, but
I am too. I actually can't argue with you that all seem very reasonable. I am shocked that gets him such a high ranking.
it's just look at this. Hey, how many guys does he have who are hitting 30 home runs?
There's just
One,
no
two,
weaknesses.
3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just count that as 7, 8. Compared to you, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I got a 46 in there.
Okay, you've got a 46, but he's got a 33. He's got a 33. But I'm saying, add those up and you put them all together, and it equals more home runs than you.
I don't know if it does. I actually think I might come out ahead. I don't know what the
Okay,
rankings say.
he's projected 326 total. You're projected 296.
I have a 34 and
30 home
this is
run
what I'm
difference.
talking about. I just don't believe the numbers. They are staring me in the face,
if
and
you
I
wanna
just
go
don't
back
believe
to,
the
like,
numbers.
You can't put everything on one guy. You are hoping and praying that Aaron Judge has a full season and he plays like that.
No, I know. That's not what I'm saying. I just forever Jack's team stares me in the face and all the stats and everything, and I just refuse to believe it. And I'm looking at it now, and I still refuse to believe that somehow this formula that you're using is right. I
Do
don't
you
think it's
know?
summing it correctly. I just
No.
reject the truth.
There's one person on this team that he could make an immediate replacement for. He could go out and spend some money and get a replacement for him and make this team even more bulletproof, and that's Carlos Correa. Because
Well,
he's
no,
got he's
It's Victor Robles.
well, Victor Robles is projected 37 stolen bases. So if you're
That
playing
is
him for
such a
that,
joke. That is such a
but
joke.
Correa, less than 20 home runs with one stolen base, more likely zero with that fucking broken paper ankle. Sure, he's got a good OBP, but if Jack wanted to go make an upgrade and make his team better, Carlos Correa seems like the guy to do it.
Yeah, Jack's not one for internal improvement. Colson Montgomery's the best prospect here. Um, yeah, if he wants to make a trade, he's kind of running out of resources. He doesn't really have farm depth anymore to trade people, and he doesn't really have BAM to trade people either. He really is down to the bare bones. So this is his roster going forward.
Yeah.
Um, of course, we all know for a couple years now, actually, Jack's been trying to trade one of his big pieces for a big haul, but no one's really taken the bait yet. So
Prices are too high.
no, I know, but it makes sense if you're him. He
Yeah.
wants
Yeah.
he wants to trade one piece and have it be his whole rebuild. Um, I love his rotation. I do. It's the offense I have a problem with. I just can never believe it's as good as it is. But the pitching's elite, out of this world, elite.
Yeah. No, very good. And what's scarier is Adams is even better.
That
Um,
Brian Wu ERA is pathetically bad on the projections.
Yeah, they don't love Brian Wu. Now, on the other hand, they think Blake Snell is a fucking god. And I'm not a Blake Snell fan.
I might bet Brian Wu Cy Young in the offseason.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I don't think Brian Wu is that good. You're going to tell me he's the third or fourth best pitcher on his own team.
I think all five Mariners pitchers could claim to be Cy Young candidates, if I'm being honest.
Their offense still sucks. Sorry, Mariners fans. Sorry, Jack. Sorry, Jacob. It's a tough world we live in.
What's Jack's potential issue? He just doesn't have one.
He doesn't have
I think
it, but that's the problem with these style teams. They don't have issues. I mean, the biggest thing you could throw at them is depth. But their team is so good that even a loss of one of these guys doesn't spell disaster. If you lose Aaron Judge, you lose Juan Soto, you're
I know.
fucking toast.
But if Adam loses Shohei, he kind of actually feels toast. Adam has more questions.
Shohei is so much different than any other player in baseball,
I know.
and he's so much in another league that yes, I would agree with that. But
Adam feels like he has a higher ceiling, but also a lower floor. Adam has more questions. I don't know if Jack's ceiling is as high. Like, I don't think Jack with this roster
Jack's
can
got a
approach
I would say that.
130 wins.
I would say that Adams' team is the ceiling team. Jack's team, in terms of the top two, Adams is the ceiling, Jack's is the floor. I know what I'm going to get from Jack's team. Like, I'm going to get excellent baseball, but on the best of best days, can he beat Adams' team on the best of best days? Well, that's the question, isn't it?
I don't think so. Right. I think Adams' team is the best in a one-on-one matchup, those two against each other. And I think over the long haul, I think Adam will have a better record. I think Jack, he finished with a 118, 91, and 11 record last year. That feels largely repeatable for him this year.
100%.
But I don't think he's going to approach. I don't think he's going to approach Adams' win total of 132 wins last year with this.
See, I do think Adam will lose some wins going into this year, but we're going to find out.
I do too. I think Adam will lose some wins. I think Jack will stay about the same amount of wins. So and I think those are made up. I think Perry makes up the difference there.
So we were talking about Aaron Judge. So let's move on to your team. Let's hop around a little bit more. So your team, you are projected aggregate of 6.6 which puts you in between Sean and Ryan. So Ryan's at a 7.5, you're at a 6.6, and Sean is at a 6.1. So you're kind of nestled right in between both of those guys currently in the aggregate. So yourself, the big thing where you absolutely excel, OBP. And, it's funny because you were criticizing me for my OBP at 12, and here you are sitting at first. Offensively, you're good across the board. Stolen bases, which is hilarious to me because you used to be the stolen base god. Completely tanked, not even a stat you can compete in anymore.
Oh, that's just the natural aging of players, right? I had like a Whit Merrifield that was key for me. He aged out effectively of the league. Tommy Edman was a big stolen base guy for me. I eventually had to trade him because he was going to be out for most of the season. I got like a small return for Tommy Edman. Bo Bichette just kind of stopped stealing bases. That's just baseball. I didn't go in thinking, man, I'm going to like take a really good stolen base roster back in 2020, 2021 and say by 2024, 2025, I have this grand plan of having no stolen bases. This wasn't the plan, it just kind of happened.
Now, we were talking in terms of top-heavy talent, though. And when you start to worry, like if they lose a guy or two, if it's going to derail your season, that defines you to a T.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Because he's got three guys. You got Aaron Judge, you got Juan Soto, and you got Gunnar Henderson. Any one of those dudes takes a step back, your team suffers. Because I don't think these projections are unfair to anyone else on your roster. No one's projected like hugely lower than what we would expect of them. I know you are a Ha-Seong Kim huge fan, but I think these have him more reasonably what he's actually going to do.
Yeah, the run and RBI totals for most of my non-star players feels a little low across the board. Not sure if they're accounting for
that's what I
expected
said at the
injury
first.
time.
Right.
But
And that's what I was saying for everybody, that you shouldn't pay too much attention to the runs and RBI totals. Look more at the home runs and stolen bases. That's, I think, is always what is more projectable versus whatever is going to happen with the team.
Lars Nootbaar is going to hit 35 bombs this year. Here's
the disconnect with you. There is no world in which Lars Nootbaar hits 35 home runs.
His StatCast is elite. He just doesn't have health. Just wait. That healthy season's coming, man. And it's going to be a top 10 MVP.
What might be the worst pitching staff in all of FTN. It's not supported by the facts, but I always like to say it. But when you talk about held together with glue and duct tape, that's what I would describe this pitching staff as. On paper, you should be all right with this. We all know the wheels are going to fall off. We can see it before it's happened.
It's bad, but like Max's is bad, but like old. Yes. Mine is bad, but at least it's young.
It's young-ish.
At least it's young. It's got youth. It's got potential. It's got promise.
It hates Walker Buehler.
It hates Walker Buehler. It hates literally everyone other than probably like Logan Gilbert.
Your top four pitchers are all projected to have ERAs above 4.
The Logan Gilbert at a 3.4 ERA is maybe the most offensive ranking in here. The man had a 0.8 whip last year. They have him at a 1.1.
Okay, but that's the point, isn't it? That nobody has 0.8 whip back-to-back seasons. Nobody does that.
I don't know, man.
Nobody does that.
Yeah, the pitching's awful. I just don't really... I've invested so much in young pitchers that if I'm going to get pennies on the dollars for everything I invested in them if I try to go for a more veteran proven thing this year. It's a no-win situation for me. I got to ride out my young pitching wave and just figure it out as I go this year and figure out the ones to keep. All the guys that you guys have come to know and associate with my team, Reed Detmers, Brady Singer, Cutter Crawford, those guys are all on their last legs. You know, they're on the shortest of leashes this year. I've stuck by them for years now. This is the cut down season, so there will be changes this year.
All right, so who should we go to next? So let's jump to the guy in between you and I, Ryan. Now this is the really interesting one because I don't personally like Ryan's team, but the more and more I look at it, the more and more I'm like, you know what? He's got the pieces and he's got the top end talent where Ryan could do some damage this year. I truly believe that. You know, he added Spencer Steer. Spencer Steer comes back and has a great season. It's going to be one of the top first basemen in all of baseball. He's got Ellie De La Cruz. He's got Jaron Duran. He's got Jackson Churio. You know, like the top end talent, if it performs, I could absolutely see Ryan taking off Paul Skeens, Shane McClanahan. You know, pitching wise, maybe there's a little less of the top end talent, but it's still there. He's got the pieces to make it happen. And if he's got a really deep farm system, and if he does everything correctly, Ryan could be on the fast track to being good again. I genuinely believe that.
I don't. I Everything you said is fine except for not sure. I take issue with you saying you're not sure if he has top end pitching talent.
I
I
said
don't
he
know
did.
what you did you?
Yeah, I said Paul Skeens and Shane McClanahan.
I thought you said he didn't have top end pitching
No,
talent.
I said he does. I said it's those two guys. Like maybe there's one or two other top end talents, but those are his top two.
Well, how many teams have three or four top end talented pitchers? Look, I think Paul Skeens, Shane McClanahan, and then you guys are going to hate to hear me say it, but Nick Lodolo. Then you have Rookie of the Year Luis Heel. You have Tobias Myers, who emerged out of nowhere last year to become kind of the top guy in Milwaukee now. And then you have Brand Bayo, who I kind of still believe in. I traded him regretfully to Ryan this offseason, but he could be good. I like Ryan's pitching a lot. I don't love it. I don't
That's
love
what
it.
I'm saying. I
I
don't love
like it.
Ryan's team, but he's got some pieces I like. And if he
That
if he
offense is
navigates
so
this
bad.
successfully, the offense is getting better though.
Is it?
I mean, he's got four guys on there right now who are all stars in their own right. Okay, if he continues to navigate this correctly, it could be a dangerous roster someday.
I think I
I can
like
see it.
your offensive future more than Ryan's.
Well, I would say the same thing too, but it doesn't necessarily make it true. I think that Ryan's team is in a better position, and I think if he's not an idiot, he stands to beat both Graydon and Jacob this year. I think that's something that could happen if he makes the right moves. Now, if he pulls a Ryan and he does what Ryan typically does, it's going to nuke it by week 2 and he'll be done. But if he navigates it correctly, there's a chance. So let's talk about the other guy in your division because this is the interesting one, Sean.
You've said this is the interesting one for like every team so far.
Well, everyone's interesting. We're all special. So Sean had an aggregate of 6.15, slotted in between Drew and Graydon.
Yeah, I'm looking at those ranks for him. It is shocking how low he is in Ks and wins, given how heavy of a starting pitching strategy he pivoted to a year and a half ago.
Yeah, so we'll get into that. But again, suffers the same thing you do. Just the stolen bases heavily lacking the stolen bases.
I don't understand the starting pitching.
The starting pitching here. I mean, you get a problem right here, and this is something that must have changed with the updated information, and that Kyle Bradish doesn't have any stats. So that probably needs to be corrected on our end.
So you have Pablo Lopez, you have Yamamoto, you have Verlander? You
Yes.
do. Do you have Lucas Giolito?
Yes.
Do you have Drew Rasmussen?
No.
Put Drew Rasmussen in there, see what happens.
Oops. It takes a second to update. So that
Oh
actually,
wow.
yeah, huge re-ranking there. See, that's what happens with this. As soon as I make a correction,
Yeah, look at
as
what happened in the table above. He went from like 11th and 12th.
where's my
That's the other reason these rankings aren't exactly perfect because we don't even have full rosters in here.
right?
And those end of the bench players, they do matter in our league, right? They can have effect. Your waiver pickups will have effect, and they're not always shown in here. So
Right, exactly. And this is not something I keep up to date, like on a weekly basis. I'll make corrections when there's big data changes, or obviously when zips and etc come out, we'll be putting those in as well. And they start. I think etc said middle of the month for January, and then zips has been slowly releasing all of their data over the past few weeks. So
what how about let's predict the future. What happens when Freddie Freeman finally retires on this roster?
well, there could be said about a lot of guys on this roster. Not a, I
But
shouldn't say that. Not a lot. What happens when Giancarlo, Mike Trout, and Freddie Freeman are gone?
I guess it's not shown here. His other first base options include presumably Colt Keith this year gets first base eligibility. Maybe Rafa Devers picks up first base eligibility in the future. Spencer Torkelson, Andrew Vaughn, and Big Christmas, John Kinsey Noel.
Yeah, no. So
So
Spencer Torkelson did not get in here because the projections hate him. That is something I have
yeah,
seen from a lot of different projection sites. Is they are very big negative on Spencer Tork, but no.
the point is the first base. Sean's gonna eventually. If you have an elite first baseman right now, I always feel like okay. Here's a thought I've never had until just now. You know how you talk about you talk about team timelines. Oh, you have a bunch of young guys that have come up. They're on cheap contracts and everything like that. You haven't paid them yet. Now's the time to trade for veterans and like maximize your window, right? To compete your contention window. You guys are all familiar with that concept, I'm sure. I think that you should judge your FTN contention window by whether or not you have a all-star first baseman. Because if you don't, you are so far behind the eight ball in this league, I feel like. But if you do have an all-star first baseman like a Freddie Freeman or a Bryce Harper, you need to go maximize that window because the moment you lose that guy due to ineffectiveness, age, position switch, injury,
It's hard to
whatever,
find another.
it's so hard to find another. So I guess all I'm saying with this is Sean's got maybe one or two more seasons of elite Freddie Freeman production. I would think only because of Freddie Freeman's age. I think Sean still needs to be a buyer.
Yeah, I mean, I do not buy Mike Trout having 31 home runs and 10 stolen bases. I don't buy that for a goddamn second. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, but you have Trout, you have Stanton. They're both healthy entering the season. Whether or not they stay that way is a question mark. But you have Freddie Freeman in his late prime. Like, look, I'm a buyer if I'm Sean. I am once again trying to compete this year. I am not tearing down yet. Not while I have an all-star first baseman. Until Freddie Freeman is no longer an all-star, I'm buying. My window is open.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some guys on the pitching side too where it's like time to replace him. Verlander, time to go.
Oh yeah.
Time to get a replacement for Verlander. Okay. Tanner Houck, I mean, he's a serviceable pitcher, but for somebody competing, like I know he had a great ERA last year, and I know he had, I believe, just as many strikeouts. There's no way Tanner Houck maintains a 3 ERA like he did last year. I just don't believe it. It will happen.
It's
Um,
interesting for a lot of the bottom teams, a lot of the teams that we talked about at the beginning, Ben. We spent a lot of time on their farm systems. We've not really even mentioned the farm systems with the last four
it's
or five
true.
teams we've talked about.
It's true.
I think that actually kind of makes sense if you think about it. But I do want to bring up just because you brought up the pitching and needing to replace these guys. Um, in my estimation, Tom's I don't know. I said Tom because I just read the name Tommy Troy on Sean's thing. Sean's top two prospects, in my opinion, are Kumar Rocker and Drew Thorpe, two starting pitchers. Those guys. I'm not saying he needs to replace Tanner Houck, but like Verlander for sure.
Yeah,
So, Giolito. So
yeah,
like yeah, Sean could have some help. Two very very high ceiling prospects in my mind.
yeah. So all right. Well, since that those changes made, so I know the guy that everybody's dying to talk about, not Graydon, and these projections love his team. Just love his team. Now, I will caution everybody: wait for ATC and Zips, because as soon as they come out, Graydon will be suddenly ranked aggregate like 7th or 8th. They just really, really love his team. Um, Case in point, O'Neal Cruz. Okay, I think
That doesn't seem unrealistic.
there's an OBP. There's no way that O'Neal Cruz will have an OBP that high.
I would argue.
Maybe I'm talking out my ass on that one.
I feel like you are. What was his OBP last year?
But now it's going to come back.
324, basically exactly the same. And he's presumably going to get better.
Yeah, but here's where Graydon's team. Just
he's a mini
huge
Jack
chunk. Yeah, exactly. Huge chunk of guys who just get a lot of home runs. And he's got some speed too. Pretty much everyone on his roster, with the exception of 1, 2, 3 guys, is projected closer to 10 stolen bases than not.
Yeah, and he's got speed demons Xavier Edwards, and I mean PCA arguably is way undersold in the speed department here, but it looks like PCA's projections actually a playing time thing, yeah. Which that's where I'm so curious. I think you need to pull the new numbers at some point because the Cubs did trade away Cody Bellinger. Yeah. I think now PCA slated back to be an everyday player, so that Graydon's team actually might shoot up even more in these projections.
Absolutely could. And so that's something that I'll be doing probably before we put this video out, is I'll go update the numbers so everyone can look at it again and see what the updated numbers look like for everybody. But yeah, I mean, pitching-wise, it's kind of the same story. I mean, he's got some heavy firepower in Chris Sale, but besides that one heavy firepower guy, pretty average, I would say, across the board.
He needs Grayrod to ascend to ace.
Yes, he does.
Status.
And he needs Mackenzie Gore to actually have a 3.77 ERA during the course of the season, which I don't think is going to happen. So, there's some question marks, I think, definitely on the pitching, but I believe Graydon's got quite a good farm system, too. And I think he'll be able to improve it.
I'm happy you brought that up, Ben. He had a lot of young guys graduate last year and just drafted a lot of young guys in general in the expansion draft. Like, for example, Royce Lewis, I almost still consider a prospect. But, Wyatt Langford graduated as a prospect. I almost kind of still consider O'Neal Cruz one. PCA graduated as a prospect. Kyle Harrison graduated as a top 100 prospect this past year. Kobe Mayo is kind of the only impact prospect expected to be up this year. He has some more minor ones. Kyle Manzardo might do some fun things. Victor Scott, you could make an argument for, is at least going to get playing time in St. Louis. But it's actually kind of barren outside of like Kobe Mayo, Ben. There's not a lot of help coming this year in the prospect.
No, and everything I'm reading with the not prospect reports, but projected lineups to start the year, none of them have Kobe Mayo even on the bench. He's still down in AAA. So
right. So this is Graydon's roster. He's actually kind of close to Jack in this regard, where there's really no reinforcements to expect this year. His roster is younger than Jack's, but it clearly isn't as good. At least not yet.
No, not yet. I think that's the big thing.
I still think this is the best team in the division, but I think that's only because it has the highest floor. I easily could see Ryan overtaking this team and just having a true breakout year. I find it harder for Jacob. I can't get in on Jacob's team. I don't think Jacob's going to make the playoffs. I think he might finish last in his conference.
That's what the projections say, but, Jacob obviously managed his way to a playoff berth last year.
He did it on the back of relief pitching, which is the most unreliable way to win in both real life and in
Got to give him
fantasy.
credit.
I feel like.
Got to give him credit. But in the way too early rankings, you and I agree. Jacob's the worst in the division. In the way too early rankings. So who have we not covered? Anybody? I think
just John Duong.
John Duong. Now we all know what to expect from John Duong. If there's ever a team where offensively I say you have a floor, it's Jack and JD. Where you have a floor, you know what you're gonna get. I mean, just the names that pop out of you on this lineup is pretty absurd. In terms of look at the stolen bases, look at the home runs. Forget the runs and RBIs. Forget the OBP. It's just like every guy on here is a 2020 player, at least.
Yeah.
And then you go down to the pitching, and the pitching doesn't represent JD's team ever because he fucking claims 4 guys to pitch every single week. So you never, he's always projected for 1,900 strikeouts like Adam and Jack. No, he always exceeds that. He gets like 2,100 because you can't accurately model the streamers and his effectiveness in doing that. So this model always shits on JD a little bit because it isn't capable of handling the moves he makes. So I will say that for its sake, and that JD probably should be in that 2 aggregate tier, and not down at like 3.6.
Yeah, I don't even see Shane Baz on this list just to add to his pitching. Regardless, not to beat around the bush, it's JD's last year in the league. My expectation is he will be massively trading from his always top end farm system for some pitching this year.
Is this a confirmed thing?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I think he's gonna be emptying the kitchen sink, acquire 3 aces and 2 of the best relief pitchers in the league in a bid to win this year is my guess. When he's gonna do that, I don't know. He's not talking baseball until January either 12th or 15th. I forget if it's the day that we do the infusion or the day that the international signing window opens. But he's not even talking baseball for another week and a half, 2 weeks. So, but we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting. This roster's absolutely loaded. He doesn't have to make any moves, and he's still the favorite in his conference, and that makes him as strong of a contender as anyone.
Undeniable.
Yeah, crazy, good, crazy stuff. What do you guys want us to talk about with JD's roster? You guys want us to salivate over it or something? Like it's just not even fun to talk about.
Right.
Yeah.
You just know how good it is.
Ben, go make some power rankings on this. So do a new tab. Go rank these teams.
Well, here. I mean, I'll just because I don't want to do that. Let me just go off the top. I don't want to write this down. If you want to share your screen and you can write it down,
just type them right there. Just type in this column U or T.
So I'm gonna go JD, Adam, Jack, Sean. Now here's where it gets tough. Okay, I think those are solid. The first 4. I think the question then becomes: is it Drew or Graydon? I think Graydon has a more solid floor, but Drew has the ceiling with his players and the young guys if they have breakout years and stuff like that. I'm gonna go Graydon currently because I think his likelihood of being in that spot is more likely than not. So right now we're just matching what the projections say. So here's where we're gonna swap up a little. I think I'm going to put myself in front of Ryan just because I fucking can. And I still think Max's team, it's tough. I really should put Ryan there. I actually think Vinny's not that bad. I would say that, and that.
I couldn't convince you. I couldn't convince you of Perry.
No. I don't think anybody should be trying to convince anyone of Perry this year. I think Perry's farm system is in a spectacular spot, and I think he's doing exactly what he needs to, and he's being patient. But he got saddled with Ryan's like ecological disaster. I have no way of explaining otherwise Ryan's team. So he's had the hardest road. Perry has taken the hardest road out of all of us. He got dumped with this garbage, and he's working to rebuild it. So I've always said I'll never saddle Perry with the shame of he built that roster. No, he got handed that garbage, and he's having to rebuild it. So
let's
but
put
he's
let's put
still
my
down there.
let's put my power rankings right next to yours.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Adam, JD, Jack.
I was gonna say, don't say something stupid. We know the top 3 teams.
I'm gonna say something stupid. Adam, JD, Jack. I'm gonna go Vinny 4.
Oh my god, huge difference. See, this is your problem. Does Vinny have money on you or something? Like, does he pay you for this?
No, I'm gonna go myself 5. I'm gonna go Sean 6. I'm gonna go Perry 7.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna go Max 8.
These are awful.
I'm gonna go Graydon 9. I'm gonna go Ryan 10. Crowd up. Ryan 10. Ben 11.
Fuck
Jacob
you.
12.
Wow, the disrespected Jacob for both of us. A playoff team last year.
It's such a bad team, dude. It's so bad. Oh, he came and joined for the very end. Hi, Truffle. Yes. How are you?
All right, well, that is that. I think we're coming up on an hour and 15 minutes, so I think that's going to be plenty of preseason baseball activity. I'm sure we'll be back. Some. Yes, that's right, Truffle. We absolutely will be back sometime in the next coming weeks once the international prospect window opens up. And guys, pitchers and catchers start to report in late February.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
We fingers.
And we're 5 weeks out from baseball.
Yep, exactly. We're getting there. It's taken forever, as it does always here, but we're getting there.
Yeah, so. I thought this would be like a 20-minute pod, and we were just gonna do power rankings, but this is all good.
Hopefully everyone doesn't just tune out after the first 15 minutes, and they've actually made it to this point to hear what our plans are for the future. But again, thank you, everyone. Stay safe with the snow coming down if you live in the middle of the country like me. So,
all right, see ya.